shot and left for dead. I've had stories of people that were told that they weren't going to survive, from birth. And the story of the gentleman I just had on, man, was um, his story. I don't want to give details out. You want to find it, you can find it on my podcast when the episode drops. But man, if if I told you the story that this guy shared, it would sound like it was something that was written for a crime scene movie on TV. Just it was such a deep, deep story, um, and how the things that he's been through and where he is now, and the journey that he's had in healing and forgiveness and living and being unmasked, as the theme of my show goes, was just it's just phenomenal, and I just can't wait for the episode to drop.
So let me ask you my first question then is, Wesley, when your journey, what got you to the point today where you and I are going to have this conversation? Like, what is it that you've gone through, or what is it maybe some of your experiences that have led you to unmasked? Maybe not only your own journey, but the journeys of other people as well.
Yeah, man, my journey is one with a lot of twists and turns. I'll kind of just start back at the beginning, because that's where every story begins. And I started just coming up in a religious household, a faith based household. My dad was a pastor, or a full time evangelist, which is essentially a pastor, but one that travels and speaks wherever he's welcomed. And so I grew up in the church. Was there every Sunday morning and night, every Wednesday night, for prayer or Bible study or youth programs. And so I just that's the background I grew up with. And as a result of that, I really did have like this self imposed pressure almost to act and speak a certain way, so that I reflect positively on my parents and reflected positively on church and ultimately God. And so I really started becoming, as I lovingly refer to myself now, as a master chameleon. I became very good at blending in with different environments, and I really started desiring, on a pretty deep level, the approval of others. And I started to really care about what they thought. I started caring about what other people thought about me, what they were saying about me. Um, and so I now know that that's actually codependency, right? Codependency is caring more about what other people think about you than what you think about yourself, and more importantly, what God thinks about you. And so that started taking root in my life. And in my teen years, that would come back to bite me, because I was out with some friends one day, and they said something, and I started laughing with them, even though I had no idea what they were talking about. No idea. And I was just sitting there praying, please don't call on me. Please don't ask me a question. Please don't do this. Because I didn't want to be found out, right? I still wanted to be accepted. And so I went home that night and I looked up that term, because I didn't want to be caught in that situation again. If it was going to come up, I wanted to know what it was so that I could participate in the conversation at some level. And so that's what it was. It was a research assignment for me. Unfortunately, the term was sexual in nature, and it opened up the world of pornography for me. And so it became a curiosity, which then became more of a heavier interest, which then became an addiction. And it kind of evolved, it kind of slowly evolves. Um, and that addiction ended up staying with me for several years. And it wasn't until about 20 years later in 2019 when I was attending a Celebrate Recovery meeting for the very first time. And I walked into this meeting, and to help you get an idea of the importance of this, Celebrate Recovery is one of those recovery meetings. It's one of those groups that is around for anybody and everybody. When people think recovery, they think drugs and alcohol as the primary things, and those are true. There's groups out there for those, like AA and NA and SA, if you're dealing with um, issues with being addicted to sex and stuff like that. But Celebrate Recovery helps anybody and everybody with any kind of a life issue. people that come in for overeating, body images, broken relationships, drugs, alcohol, you name it. It could even be picking your nose if that's what you want to get rid of in your life. It sounds silly, but I mean, it's true. So I went to the Celebrate Recovery meeting for the first time after hearing about it, because I was like, man, I've been dealing with this addiction for a while now, almost 20 years. I say a while, that's really a long time. Something has to change, and I can't beat it. I've tried time and time again to do it myself, with no luck. And so I went, and the first time I walked in, I was asked what brought me in, and they said, I said codependency. Now, I had never even heard the term codependency until that night. But I heard it explained from stage. Somebody else said it. And so I was like, oh, hey, that's me. Like, I totally relate to that. And so I said codependency because I wanted to give myself an out. I didn't want to admit why I was actually there. And the leader said, okay. And he stopped and he started to pick up his book, with the script or the order of service or whatever for the group that night. And he stopped and he looked back at me. Now, it's important for me to say here that we're the only ones there. It's just me and this one guy. We're in a group specifically for newcomers, and I was the only newcomer that night. So it's just a one-on-one. If there had been other people, this probably wouldn't have happened the same way. Matter of fact, I can almost guarantee it wouldn't have. But by God's design, I was the only one there that night. And he said, he started picking up his book, and he stopped and he looked at me and he said, is there anything else? Now, I kid you not, I don't know what happened. I don't know what prompted it, other than it had to have been a prompting from the Holy Spirit for him to ask that question, because there was no reason for him to do it. It's not in the script. I'm a leader of Celebrate Recovery now. I lead that group, and I can tell you it's not in the script. But he asked me the question, and in that moment, without even realizing I was doing it, I just started bawling. I started sobbing, and I just blurted out this secret that I'd been holding in for 20 years. Never told a soul that I was dealing with it. And it was in that moment that I stepped out of denial, and I admitted to another human being the exact nature of my wrongs, and my healing began. A switch was flipped in my head, and my journey to recovery began. And over the years, as I've been working on my recovery now, I'm just over 6 years clean from pornography. I've realized the power of sharing your story. I've shared my story and my full testimony many times within the recovery circles, within Celebrate Recovery. And a couple of years ago, God kind of laid it on my heart that, hey, it's time to share this story outside of Celebrate Recovery. And I'm like, you want me to do what? Like, no, like I'm still codependent at some level. Like, I want others to accept me. What if I share this and somebody doesn't like me? Like, I don't want that to happen. But he's like, no, it's time. And so I started writing my book, The Blueprint of Becoming: A Practical Guide to Faith, Failure, and Finding Your Way Forward. And the first 2 chapters, I lay out my testimony. I talk about my upbringing as a pastor's kid. I talk about my addiction. I talk about ways that I've seen God move in my life that have made me who I am today. And I started writing that. And then about a year or so ago, I became unemployed. And I started working on it a little bit more. And then this year in April, I became unemployed again due to my job being eliminated. And God's like, okay, like, no more delaying, no more procrastinating. It's time. You're going to sit down and you're going to do this. And so I did. I sat down, I finished the book. And in October of this year, October 14th of this year, it was officially released, and it's now available anywhere anywhere books are sold on paperback or ebook. But in it, I talk about not only my story, but I also share biblical stories of people that were used by God despite their past. I share practical steps that people can take to help them work through things in their own life that they're struggling with, they're dealing with. And I refer to a lot as, or I refer a lot to navigating your life and making sure that you are following the direction and the call that God has on your life. I use a nautical example, if you will, of in navigation of stars, and sailors would navigate using the North Star to ensure that they're headed in the proper direction. And so I use that as an example in the book, where when you examine your life, everything that you've done, every decision you've made, every job that you've had, every relationship that you've had, everything is a star in this constellation of your life. But to navigate it, you have to make sure that your North Star is the proper North Star. And for me, that North Star is God. And if I want to make sure that I'm walking in alignment with Him, then I need to make sure that my North Star is properly placed and is the brightest shining star in my constellation. Otherwise, I'm not going to be following the proper path that He has for me in my blueprint of becoming. And so that kind of is what led to my book. And after that came out, I started doing podcasts. I started talking on podcasts, talking about my book, sharing my story, much like I'm doing here today. Because it's kind of a natural evolution, I said, okay, my book's out. And he's like, okay, now you're going to go a step further. And so I started doing podcast interviews. And now, as within about a month ago, I should say, he's like, okay, you remember that idea about 5 years ago that I kind of gave you about a podcast? Let's examine that again. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, God, like, that was just an idea. Like, do you really want me to do this? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, but I'm unemployed right now. I'm 8 months unemployed, 7 months unemployed at the time. Like, I don't have the money to pay for a streaming service or anything to do the editing and the hosting, and what the podcasts aren't free to run. And so I'm like, God, if you want me to do this, you have to provide. Like, I can't do it right now on my own. And I gave it to him. I put the ball, as people like to say, I put the ball back in his court. I said, I'm willing, but the ball's in your court. You want me to do it, you have to provide. And if there's one thing I've learned, is if you're really serious about something and you're serious about following the call that God's put on your life, and you give Him a challenge, you better be willing to back that up, because He's not going to let it go. Excuse me. And the very next day, I walk into a Celebrate Recovery meeting, and this person walks up as a third party and hands me this envelope. And the envelope has my name on it, and it says, from an anonymous source. And I'm like, what is this? And I open the podcast. I open the envelope, and in the envelope is the money that I need to start my podcast. And I literally started laughing, and my friend looked at me and he's like, what? So I told him, and I just was like, okay, God, I hear you. Message received loud and clear. So I came home that night and I started my podcast. And the podcast is not just to share my story, which I do. I release 2 episodes a week. On Tuesdays, I release a solo episode where I talk about things that are faith and recovery related. I talk about my own story on those episodes. And then on Thursdays, I release an episode that has a guest. We have a special guest, and they share their story, much like I talked about earlier at the start of this podcast episode. And so it's just kind of become a natural evolution of sharing my story of addiction and recovery, and the journey that I've had in life growing up. Because as you share your story, you begin to realize that even with the healing that's taken place, it's not meant to be kept bottled up. It's not meant to be kept inside. if you're experiencing healing or something along those lines, or freedom from an addiction, or from a hurt or a hang up in your life, then you need to share that. Don't keep it bottled up. Share it. Tell somebody else about it, because you never know. You talking about it might just be the freedom, might just be the thing that that person needs to hear to experience the freedom that you're talking about. And so that's what my podcast and my book, and now I do speaking engagements and things like that, where I just come and I share my story, and I just tell people, like, hey, am I proud? People ask me, are you proud of the things you've done? How can you talk about your addiction and stuff so freely? And I look at them and I tell them, I dealt with this thing for 20 years. Am I proud with it or proud of it? Absolutely not. But can I change anything that's happened? Nope, I can't. I can't change what's happened in the past. The only thing I can change is what happens in the future, right? That's the only thing that I can impact. And I would much rather share my story and keep it in the light where I can potentially help others than to not talk about it and just let it slip back into the background, slip back into the darkness, where it now has the ability to start regaining control in my life. Because the longer something is in the darkness, the longer you don't talk about it, the more potential you have of shame, of doubt, of pain, the pain from it, all that stuff starting to be able to creep back into your life. And if you're truly, truly walking in freedom, and you've accepted, and you're now forgiven, and you're walking in freedom, then those things shouldn't be a part of your life. And so I talk about it now because I'm not proud of it, but I can't change it. And hopefully by talking about it, it'll help somebody else.
I recently shared with someone who was going through something similar, and I've gone through something similar as we were discussing. And I told them we may not be proud of what we did, or maybe even what we went through, but we should be proud of the person that we're becoming, that has worked through those things. And when you mention the shame, the guilt, the addiction, the pornography, all these things, where there's many people out there that are still consumed by the guilt and the shame, and they don't even talk about it. They may whisper it in their bedrooms with the door closed and the drapes down, right? Make sure no
Yep.
one hears me. But you're taking a courageous first step. And when it comes to codependency, since you mentioned that, Wesley, one thing I always want to ask you or those that have gone through it is, when it comes to codependency and its impact on your life, how did you find it impacting you when it came to self-love, the love for yourself, as well as maybe obtaining the love of others around you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because as you really think about it, I mean, you mentioned something that I want to just touch on real fast is, you can't, like we said, you can't change your past. You are not defined by your past. You are not defined by the things that happened to you. You're not defined by the things that you've done. You're only defined by who you say you are, and more importantly, who God says that you are. And so I want the listeners to hear that. Just because you've done something, or something has happened to you, or you were brought up in a certain environment or a certain way, that does not mean that you have to be defined by that. And when it comes to forgiveness and codependency and things like that, as a codependent, when you really, really, really start caring more about what other people think about you, than you do about yourself, or what God says about you, it becomes very easy. And this happened to me. You begin to lose yourself, because when somebody asks you, "Hey, what do you think about this?" your first thought is not, "What do I think about this?" Your first thought is, "Well, who are they? What do they do? What do you think they think about this? And now what should you respond so that you're in line with what they think about it, so that you can become liked or accepted or approved of by this person?" And so that is how that's how your brain works. That's how it functions. And so everything when somebody asks your opinion on something, if you're out to dinner and you're ordering stuff for something, now I didn't go as far as dinner. I grew up a pretty picky eater, and I still am in a lot of ways. So I did not let codependency overtake me in that, much to the demise of some other people in my life that probably would have liked if I'd have been a little bit more adventurous. Um, um, but that's how your brain works. It just you start thinking, okay, what do they what do you think they want you to hear or say, versus what you really think, and so it becomes very hard. You truly begin to lose yourself, and as a result, you you lose your confidence in yourself. You lose your self image, because you don't know who you are. And for a long time, I didn't know who I was. Like, I knew that I was a pastor's kid. I knew I grew up in the church. I knew some of those basic things, but I didn't know who I was when it came to my interests, my, my favorite color, my, whatever it is. Those basic things. And everyone's like, oh yeah, my favorite interest is this. My favorite color is this. I didn't know those types of things because for the longest time, those things were defined by whoever I was around. If I was out with you and your favorite interest was baseball cards, then we were going to talk baseball cards, and that was going to be like the coolest thing in my entire life while I was out with you. And the moment I left you and I went out with the guy next to you and his favorite interest was hockey, then I was going to be interested in hockey, and that was going to be my favorite. And my favorite color would have been, or my favorite sports teams would have been, whatever his aligned with his, because I wanted to be accepted and approved of, and not rejected and not set aside. And so that's just how I operated, how my brain operated. And it's taken me a long time, a lot of really, really hard work to kind of stop and set that aside and realize who I actually am, and to be able to answer with truth of what I want versus what I think that they want me to say. And it's still not easy. I still today, like, somebody's like, hey, what do you think about this? It takes me a few minutes to respond, and sometimes I can't respond because my brain is still doing this internal, okay, is this what I really think, or is this what I think that they think what I want? Is this what I think that they think I think they want me to say, And I do this back and forth, this struggle, and I can't even say it right. I mean, that's how complicated it is. It's just this constant back and forth in my head, to be able to make sure that I'm trying to give people the honest truth about what I really think versus what I think they want me to say.
Do you then think that part of your battles or struggles with codependency was you trying to find or even create an identity that was more than a pastor's son, more than a churchgoer? You're trying to be someone, but to your point, you're like, am I who I want to be, or am I who they want me to be?
Man, I don't even know how to answer that. Like, I just, because it's seriously is one of those things. Like, I loved my identity as a pastor's kid, as a son of an evangelist. My mom served in ministry, in various capacities as well over the years, and as a result, I did too growing up in many different ways. I've served, and I still do today. But I don't do it now because I feel like somebody else wants me to. I do it because I want to, because it's important part of my faith. And I believe it's what God is calling me to do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be speaking with you today. I wouldn't have my book. I wouldn't have my podcast, that type of stuff. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to addiction and codependency and things like that. And I mean, there's questions that I may never really be able to answer.
Like, I asked that because there's a woman that I used to work with. She had a podcast, and I know she stepped away from it for a bit. And she had an addiction, but her addiction was, I'm addicting. I'm addicted to people who want to love me, because growing up, the love that she had was very conditional. She had to perform to get it from her parents. She had to perform to get it from her friends. So as she grew up into an adult, she had to perform to get love from the men that she was dating.
Yeah.
And she had a business of her own, And what happened is she wanted to be loved so badly, and this person was saying all the nice things, right? You're beautiful, you're lovable, I'm gonna marry you, we're gonna have beautiful children, 2.5, white picket fence, dog named Sparky, the American dream, right? She ended up making this her business joint with him, put it in his name jointly. Eventually, the stardust got thicker in her eyes, the love circles got bigger. She ended up putting the business in that person's name. He runs off with the business now. She lost her source of love in the way that she wanted to be loved. She lost her business, which was her identity and defined her
Mm-hmm.
according to how she shared it. And now she was lost and now she was struggling. And that's why I ask these questions of those people who experience codependency is sometimes there's something within us that we want so badly that maybe we see it in other people and we try to hang around them. As you mentioned, the baseball cards or the next friend with the hockey, you're like, okay, I'm keeping these people around me because I can be around them as long as I talk their language. How were you able to identify you needed to make a change to live a better life like you're doing today?
Yeah, that a lot of it has started, and I didn't realize that I needed to make a change up until I really started my journey in recovery. Because I've been over the years as I've been working my recovery, and I still find things. I'm 6 years, just over 6 years now, clean from pornography, and I'm still finding new things out about myself and about the addiction as I continue working through recovery. As I speak, and people ask me a question, I'm like, oh, like light bulb moment. It's like they ask a question that connects a dot that I've been, thinking about for a while. And as I've been working through it, I've realized that the pornography addiction was a bad thing, but in a lot of ways, it was a symptom and not the root cause. The symptom, or the root cause was really my codependency. I wanted so badly to be accepted and approved of by this group of friends from work that I was going to do everything I could to fit in. And so I went home and I looked up that term. Now, I didn't go home and look up that term to start this addiction, right? I didn't, that's not, was not the intention behind it. It was an uh, innocent attempt to fit in. And the codependent of me wanted to fit in. And so I went home and I looked up this term. And so that was really, the codependency was actually the root cause, as best as I can tell now. That might change as I continue to work through things. In recovery, we say that you're never fully healed. Recovery is not a one and done thing. It's a lifelong journey. And so day after day, year after year, I continue to work through it, and I continue to learn new things about myself and uncover new things and stuff. But as best as I can tell at this point in my life, the addiction was just a symptom of the root cause of codependency and my desire to fit in and be approved of by others. And so I can easily see how somebody like your friend would say, hey, they say that women who don't have a male role model in their life or something along those lines, then they'll go extra far to be approved of or accepted and seek out men because they didn't have it growing up, right? Or if they weren't loved in a certain way and they know that that's what they want, then they'll do anything and everything they can, man or woman. If you're not loved a certain way and it's what you want, you're going to do everything you can to get that. And you just have to be really careful. You have to be very careful that you don't let it cloud your judgment, and have something like your friend, something happen to you like what unfortunately happened to your friend. Um, it can be a very slippery slope.
When you look back on what you went through and you're standing here in front of me today and you've found success, you've created success, and you touched on this earlier, what is something that surprises you when you look back on your journey that you've been able to overcome so far?
I think the biggest thing that surprises me, off the top of my head, is just how deep it all really goes. Like I said, it's an ongoing journey, and every time that I work through, Celebrate Recovery has a what they call it, a step study, and really it's about a 9 month deep dive into recovery, and you work through all 12 steps in a very deep, methodical way. I'm currently going through one for my third or fourth time, and every time I go through one, I uncover something new, and it because it's like peeling an onion, or a pineapple or something like that. You have to do it layer by layer by layer. You can't go straight to the core, because there's just too many layers to get through. And recovery is the exact same way. Is I'm just going layer by layer, and each time I find something new that's like, oh, I never realized that, or I never thought about it like that, or the one of my favorite things about being in recovery is actually just going to the meetings. And in Celebrate Recovery, every other week is a testimony night in your recovery meeting. And testimony nights are my absolute favorite time, because I love hearing people share their journey about the things that they've gone through, and their journey of recovering, and what's happened to them, and how they've gotten to where they are today, because you can relate to it in some way, shape, or form. If somebody gets up there and it was an alcoholic, right, or somebody was addicted to drugs, or I heard a testimony from a guy once that was a mob hitman, like, and every time I hear a testimony, even though I can't relate specifically with whatever it is that they were overcoming or getting out of, drugs, alcohol, being a mob hitman, whatever it might be, even though I can never relate to those things, there are parts of their story, of their journey, that I can relate to. The feelings of wanting to be accepted, the feelings of, how they were brought up in some cases. There's always something in the story that you can relate to in some way, and then you can apply it to your life, and it helps connect dots, or it gives you something more to kind of mull over and then allows you to connect dots yourself. And so I just love testimony nights, because of what they bring to the table.
From the church to the group that you're a part of, how important would you say it is to have positive, healthy support systems and influences around you?
Man, you could not have asked a better question. Uh, Community is the most important thing that you can have in your life, besides a relationship with God. First and foremost, you have to have a relationship with God in your life. There's no way around it from my perspective. That is the most important thing you will ever do. But next to that is a community. You have to have a community of people that will love you, that will encourage you, that will speak life into you, that you can be yourself around, unapologetically, and that you can just do life with them. I have guys in my life now, and it's great to have a group, and mixed groups are great, but you have to have a core group that is the same gender as you, because they can relate to you, and at levels that the other sex can't, and you're going to be able to talk to them in ways that you can't talk to other people. I'm not going to go up to a woman, even if she's my best friend, quote unquote. I'm not going to go up to there and go up to her and tell her what I was just thinking about that lady that just walked by. It's not gonna be able to do it the same way. Can't relate the same way, right? They don't think the same way. So you have to have a group of guys that you can just be raw and honest with, or a group of women, if you're a lady listening to me share today, where you can just talk about what's going on in your life without fear of judgment, without fear that they're going to go and share your business with everybody, right? You have to have that anonymity, or that confidentiality, as the terms that we use in recovery. And you just got to be able to, hey, I need to have a raw moment with you. Can I share? Like, just between you and me, not you, me, and the fence post, just you and me. And where you can just be like, hey, here's what's going on in my life right now. Here's what I feel like I need to do, And will you just be there with me? Will you encourage me? Will you check in on me? Will you speak life into me? And just be there to just be there for me, right? But then the nice thing about that is because you're in this core group, you get to do the same thing for them. It's a two-way street, and I think that's one of the areas that we fall short. Is people are very quick to take, but they're not as quick to give. And if somebody is giving you their time, if they're allowing you to vent and everything, and they're just there listening, you better be doing the same thing for them. Like, all right, hey, I've been talking now for an hour, and you probably are done hearing me talk. What's going on in your life? And then shut up and let them talk, and just and just have that community aspect where it's a two-way street. You're able to do life together, and the when you can do that, when you can have a community where you're maybe not always going deep, but you're just calling up, you're like, hey, I'm bored right now. You want to go grab dinner? You want to go grab lunch? You want to go to play putt-putt golf? You want to go to a hockey game? You want to go collect baseball cards? You want to go collect rocks? Go for a walk by the water? Whatever it is, just do life. Hey, the kids are outside playing. You want to come over, just hang out and have a beer or have a Pepsi or whatever. You just hang out and do life. Build a friendship, because when you have a solid friendship, that's a deep friendship, that goes beyond the surface level, then when crap hits the fan and you need somebody in your corner to fight with you, whether you're trying to overcome an addiction or something like that, or you're going through a really rough patch in your relationship and you just need a listening ear, whatever it is, when you have that deep friendship level, it becomes a whole lot easier to pick up the phone and call that person and have them be in your corner and for them to be able to support you, because you have that bond, you have that friendship to build off of, and to I think of it almost like a piggy bank, right? You've got the savings that you've built up by building this relationship, and now you can withdraw a little bit from that savings account. And then once you're through it, you go back and you rebuild it.
I'm a big advocate for creating healthy communities, strong bonds within those communities. I'm even bigger proponent of deposits and withdrawals. How much are you depositing into yourself? How much are you depositing into the community? Because once you have one, two, three, four, 10 people all pouring into this emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical health of safety and security, then you could withdraw. To your point, right, Wesley? You know what? I'm going through something. I can call Terrain. I need advice. I can call Wesley. What other pillars of a strong, unified, healthy community do you think we need so we all can enjoy safety and security?
Yeah, you can't stop at just one person. When you think of the community or a bank or whatever it is, there's multiple pillars to it. And to me, every person is a pillar. And everybody brings something unique to the bank, to the story, to the experience, to the whatever it is. We were all brought up differently. We all have our own personal journeys of things that we've gone through. If I need advice on saving money, then I'll call Train. If I need advice on women, I might call Jim Bob. If I need advice on how to run my business, I might call Larry. Everybody has their own experiences, their own area of expertise. And so it in childcare, it's often said, in life, it says, it takes a village to raise a kid, right? Everyone, I'm sure, has heard that term. I would argue it takes a village to do life, not just a kid. It takes a village to do life. Everybody brings something unique, and when you have a diverse group of friends to do life with, then you have that bank with all of these different areas or sub accounts, that, if you will, that you can withdraw from as you go. And I think that's extremely important.
Earlier in my life, I was struggling with people pleasing. And it was very traumatic at that point in life because I was growing into the man that I thought I wanted to be, but I was keeping around the wrong people that was kind of hindering that growth because I was trying to satisfy them before I was satisfying myself. And what the trauma led me to do in some cases was to maybe doubt if I could become that person, where some other people they may isolate, or some other people they may participate in toxic behaviors. What do you think, maybe from your experience or what you observe, is preventing people from joining these healthy communities that we're talking about after traumatic events or traumatic childhood?
I'm going to say it, and there's probably going to be some people that don't agree with me, but I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway. And that is simply shame. And it is the enemy. The devil is the master manipulator. He's the greatest liar that ever lived. And he wants you to live in shame. He wants you to live in fear. He wants you to live with this thing in your life, because as long as you've got it in your life and you're living that way, then he has a foothold and he can rule in your life in some way, shape, or form. And so when somebody has something in their life that they're like, man, I really feel like something needs to change, but I don't know how to do it. Well, I would argue they probably know how to do it, but they're not wanting to do it because of two reasons. Okay. Number one, I've already mentioned it. The fear, the shame, the doubt, the guilt that is overcoming their life. They don't want to admit that to somebody else. So they stay silent. And because they stay silent, they keep it in their life. Number two, they are familiar with their life, right? They know what life is like right now with that thing in it. It's it's the devil that they know. They know how to navigate life with it in it and navigate the challenges that come with it. They don't know what life looks like without it. They have no idea what life is going to look like without it, and it scares them. When I was battling with my addiction pornography, I had no idea what life was going to look like without it. And it scared me a little bit because I didn't like not knowing. But I knew that something had to change. And eventually, I had that what a lot of people would call a rock bottom moment, where I was like, okay, I know something has to change, and I don't care what life looks like without it in it. I know something has to change for me. And so I threw caution to the wind, if you will, and I started the process. I went to my recovery group for the first time, and I started down the journey because I knew something had to change. And when I made that decision to say, okay, I don't care what life looks like without it in it, I just know something has to change, and then I'll figure it out as I go, right? And I released control, because that's essentially what you're doing when you make that commitment to yourself. You're releasing the control, and you're saying, God, I can't do this on my own. I have to give it to you. I need your help. I've tried doing it on my own. I can't do it. I've done that, been there, done that. I keep screwing it up. Excuse me. And so you release the control, and you admit that you don't care what life looks like without it. It's got to be better than what it is now. And I guarantee you, if you're listening to me and that's a decision that you're trying to make right now, and you're like, I don't know what life looks like without it. I like this little life that I have now. Yeah, it kind of sucks because this thing is still in my life, but the rest of it's good. Then make the commitment, throw caution to the wind, as I said. Make the commitment and get rid of that thing from your life. Take the steps. Find a recovery meeting. Find a Celebrate recovery meeting. I guarantee you, it doesn't matter what it is you're dealing with. You walk into a meeting like that, and I'm not paid by them or hosted by them or anything like that. Let me make that clear. I speak about Celebrate Recovery so passionately because I've seen what it can do in my life. I've seen what it has done in many other lives, and I know that it can help you. I don't care what it is you're going through. Throw caution to the wind. Find that meeting. Go to crlocator.com. Plug in your zip code and find a meeting near you, and just take that step, because I guarantee you, life is better without that thing in it. If you get to the other side and you don't like what life is like without that thing in it, then you know how to get back to where you are right now. But I guarantee you life is better without that thing in it.
Yeah, so many people get stuck with the comfort of their life, especially if they've gotten used to it being bad, chaotic, dramatic, toxic for those that love that word, right? And you always need that foundation. And for me, that foundation was when I was participating in the church in my early teens. And that set the foundation for me to be prepared for me to deal with what I went in my 20s, because that was a decade of disaster. You know, I moved away from friends, my parents divorced, I was going through difficulty at my job. Like everything that was falling apart was falling apart. But I had the preparation.
Mm-hmm.
I had the good word. I had my faith. I said that it is going to get better because you're going to continue to push for it to get better. And despite what maybe I was going through, it didn't diminish the worth that I had for myself, because I knew I was going to be able to go through it because I wanted to go through it and come out on the other side.
You know, you just said something that's key right there, and I want to highlight that. You wanted to come out the other side. I talk time and time again with people that are like, hey, my boyfriend, my husband, my friend is going through, my son, my daughter, they're going through this thing right now, and I'm going to bring them to this recovery meeting or bring them to talk to you or whatever it is. I'm going to bring them because you need to help them and help them see the error of their ways or whatever. And that's great. Bring them. Like, but you have to be willing to accept that they're not going to change. You know, they might start to change for you, but it's not going to stick. It's not going to stick until they want to change, until they have made the decision to surrender it and to want to change, because that is the key there. You can't force somebody to change a habit or a hurt or a hang up in their lives unless they want to, as much as you wish you could. You know, you can't fix somebody else. You can only fix yourself. In recovery and Celebrate Recovery, we call it cleaning your street, right? You can only clean your side of the street. You can only control you. You can't clean somebody else's side of the street for them. And so you gotta focus on yourself. Pray for that person. Be there to be that listening ear, that encourager, that person that they can come to when they need somebody. And then when they're ready, you can be like, hey, I know exactly where to take you. Let's go and jump in the car and go to meetings with them for a while if that's what you need to do. But you can't do it for them.
So let me ask you one final question before I let you go. And for this question, I'm going to give you 3 wishes. You can wish for anything but more wishes and, of course, more money. What are 3 things you wish people knew or at least understood about letting people want to be better and not forcing them to be better?
I would just, number one, I would just go back to what I was just saying is you can't force them to do it. They have to want it, you know, and as soon as you realize that, you're already a step ahead. And then number 2, again, what I just said, even once you've realized number 1, then you just go into number 2, and that's just be there to support them, to be there to love on them, be there to encourage them, be there to let them know that you love them and you're there for them despite what's happening to them, what they're going through, what they're struggling with, whatever it is. The love is unconditional. The friendship is unconditional. That is so important. So important. And then the final thing is, again, just when they're ready, be there to walk the journey with them. Whether that's going to meetings with them, whether it's just giving them a ride to and from, whatever it is, just be there, because they're going to need it. overcoming something in your life, whether it be an addiction, whether it be negative self-images, the feelings, that whatever the hurt, the habit, the hang-up is what Celebrate Recovery calls it. Whatever it is, that hurt, that habit, the hang-up, whatever it is, overcoming it is not an easy thing. It's a journey. And it's a whole lot easier when you have somebody there that's willing to walk it with you and